The polish on the marble floor reflected my tired face as I scrubbed on my hands and knees. 19 months I'd been working at the Bolano estate, and not once had Mr. Salvatore Bolano, the owner of this sprawling mansion and half of Chicago's underworld, if rumors were true, looked directly at me. I was nothing but a shadow that moved through the halls, erasing fingerprints and dust before they had time to settle. Elena, the East Wing needs attention. Mrs. Conti, the head housekeeper, didn't wait for my response before clicking away in her sensible heels, the sound echoing through the cavernous foyer. I tucked a strand of brown hair behind my ear and gathered my cleaning supplies. The East Wing. That meant his wing, Mr. Bolano's private quarters. A flutter of anxiety rippled through my stomach. The staff whispered about him in hushed tones, about the men who entered his study and sometimes didn't leave, about the phone calls that came in the middle of the night, about the blood that occasionally stained his pristine white shirts. Not that I'd seen much of him. In my position, you learn to be invisible. You enter rooms backward, eyes down, and leave before anyone realizes you were there. You become furniture, useful but unnoticed. The East Wing was cooler than the rest of the house, quieter. The thick Persian rugs muffled my footsteps as I moved through the corridor toward his study. The door was ajar, and I hesitated. Rule number 1: never enter Mr. Bolano's study unless explicitly instructed. Rule number 2: if you must enter, knock, wait, and only proceed if granted permission. I raised my knuckles to rap against the heavy oak when I heard voices, angry, threatening voices. You think you can steal from me and just disappear? The voice was low, controlled, but laced with something dangerous. Mr. Bolano, I built you from nothing, Vincenzo. I gave you everything. Sal, please, another voice trembling, desperate. Don't sal me. You're alive right now only because I'm giving you one chance. 1. Bring me what you took, plus 20% by Friday. Otherwise, I'll visit your mother in Napoli myself. My hand froze mid-knock. I should leave. Now. But my body wouldn't move. My men will escort you out, Mr. Bolano continued. And Vincenzo? Don't make me look for you. Footsteps approached the door. Panic seized my chest. I backed away, but my cleaning cart betrayed me, rattling against the wall. The door swung open fully, and I found myself face to face with Salvatore Bolano himself. I'd seen him before, of course, from a distance, from the corners of rooms, through half-open doors, but never like this. Never close enough to notice that his eyes weren't simply brown, but amber, with flecks of gold that caught the light. Never close enough to smell the expensive cologne that clung to him. Sandalwood, and something sharper, more dangerous. Never close enough to feel the energy that radiated from him like heat from a flame. He was younger than most people assumed, maybe 35, with the kind of striking features that belonged on a Renaissance painting. Dark hair swept back from a strong forehead, a straight nose, full lips currently pressed into a hard line. And those eyes, those terrible, beautiful eyes, now fixed directly on me. Behind him stood a man with a bruised face and split lip, flanked by 2 broad-shouldered security men I recognized from the grounds. I'm sorry, sir, I stammered, lowering my gaze to the floor. I was just about to clean the... Wait. His voice cut through my apology like a knife. Not raising it, not even slightly, but with such authority that everything else in the world seemed to quiet. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. Had I heard too much? Was I about to disappear like those men the staff whispered about? Look at me, he commanded. I forced my eyes upward, meeting his gaze. Something flickered across his face. Curiosity, surprise. I couldn't tell. What's your name? He asked. Elena, sir. Elena Russo. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Too high, too breathless. How long have you worked here, Elena Russo? 19 months, sir. His eyebrows rose slightly. 19 months. He repeated the words like they were a puzzle he was solving. And I've never seen you before. One of the security men cleared his throat. Boss, we should... Mr. Bolano raised a hand, silencing him without breaking eye contact with me. Take him downstairs. I'll join you shortly. The men nodded, gripping the bruised man's arms and guiding him away. I should have been relieved to see them go, but somehow being alone with Salvatore Bellano was more terrifying. 19 months, he said again, his eyes moving over my face, my uniform, my hands still clutching a bottle of cleaning solution. How is that possible? I didn't know what to say. Should I apologize for being unmemorable? For doing my job too well? For becoming the ghost the position required? We're trained to be discreet, sir, I finally managed. To work without disturbing the household. Something that might have been amusement touched his lips. Discreet, he echoed. Yes, I suppose you are. He stepped closer, and it took everything in me not to back away. Tell me, Elena Russo, what else have you seen while being discreet? My throat went dry. Nothing, sir. I just cleaned the rooms I'm assigned. And what did you hear just now, before I opened this door? The truth seemed safest. Something about someone stealing from you. About giving them until Friday. I swallowed hard. I didn't mean to overhear. I was just about to knock. He studied me for a long moment, his eyes unreadable. Do you know who I am, Elena? What I do? You're Mr. Bellano. You own this house. His mouth curved into something not quite a smile. Is that all? People say I hesitated. Things. What kind of things? My hands were trembling. I set the cleaning bottle down on my cart before I dropped it. That you're connected. Powerful. That people who cross you disappear. He didn't deny it. Instead, he reached out, and I flinched involuntarily, but all he did was take the damp cloth from my cart, examining it between his fingers as if it were some foreign object. Do you fear me, Elena Russo? Yes, I whispered, unable to lie with those eyes on me. He nodded, as if that were the correct answer, the only sensible one. Then he stepped back, returning to his study. You may clean the other rooms in this wing, not this one, not today. Relief washed over me. I was being dismissed, not disappeared. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I reached for my cart, eager to escape before he changed his mind. Elena? I froze. The things you hear while being discreet. Keep them to yourself. Always, sir. He gave me one last, lingering look before closing the door, and I released the breath I'd been holding. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Salvatore Bellano's face, felt the weight of his gaze. Something had changed. I had been seen, and somehow, that felt more dangerous than remaining invisible. The next morning arrived with a pounding on my door. I shared a small apartment with 2 other maids, Lucia and Maya, in a building owned by the Bellano family, 10 minutes from the estate. The knocking came again, more insistent. Lucia groaned from her bed. Elena, make it stop. I stumbled to the door, still half asleep, and pulled it open to find Mrs. Conti standing there, her usually impeccable hair hastily pinned back, her face pale. Elena, get dressed. Now. What? Mr. Bellano has requested you, personally. Ice slid down my spine. For what? For his morning service. Apparently, he's decided you'll be his personal maid from now on. I stared at her, uncomprehending. But that's your job. A flash of irritation crossed her face. Not anymore. And Elena? Her voice dropped. Be careful. Mr. Bellano doesn't notice the help, until he does. She glanced over my shoulder at Lucia and Maya, who were now sitting up, listening. 20 minutes. The car will be waiting. After she left, Lucia and Maya bombarded me with questions I couldn't answer. Why me? What had I done? Had I spoken to him? Was I in trouble? I dressed in my best uniform with shaking hands, pinning my hair back severely, trying to return to invisibility, but it was too late for that. The car waiting downstairs wasn't the staff van, but a sleek black Bentley with tinted windows, a driver standing beside it. He opened the door without a word, and I slid into the leather back seat, my modest uniform suddenly feeling absurdly out of place. The Bellano estate looked different in the early morning light, more vulnerable somehow, the shadows not yet retreated to their corners. The driver led me not to the service entrance, but through the main doors, past the curious glances of security personnel who'd never bothered to look at me before. Mrs. Conti was waiting in the grand foyer, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Follow me. I'll show you what's expected." She led me through the house, rattling off instructions. Mr. Bolano rises at 6:30. His coffee. Black, 2 sugars, heated cup. I finished automatically. I'd prepared it countless times when filling in for other staff. She looked at me sharply. "Yes. His breakfast is prepared by Chef Marcus. You'll serve it in the morning room or his study, depending on his schedule. His suits are pressed by Mr. Vanucci on Thursdays, delivered Fridays." Mrs. Conti stopped walking. "You've been paying attention," I shrugged. "It's my job to notice details." "Well," she sniffed, "perhaps that's why he chose you." She continued her briefing, explaining which rooms I was responsible for, which staff reported to me now. Me, who until yesterday had been at the bottom of the hierarchy, and most importantly, the security protocols. "You'll be given clearance to enter his private spaces. That means you'll be vetted, background checked, watched. One mistake, Elena, and it's not just your job at stake." We reached a door I'd never been allowed to approach. Mr. Bolano's bedroom. Mrs. Conti knocked softly. "Enter," came the response from within. She pushed open the door, and I followed her into a space that was simultaneously exactly what I'd expected, and nothing like I'd imagined. Masculine but not ostentatious. Cream walls, dark furnishings, a massive bed with rumpled sheets, and standing by the window, silhouetted against the morning light, Salvatore Bayano himself. He was wearing only dress pants and an unbuttoned shirt, his chest and feet bare. I averted my eyes instantly, but not before noticing the lean muscle of his torso, the dark tattoo that curled around his left side, the faint scars that spoke of violence survived. "Mrs. Conti," he acknowledged, "and Elena." He said my name differently than hers, with a slight emphasis I couldn't interpret. "I've briefed Ms. Russo on her new duties, sir," Mrs. Conti said, her tone professional but cooler than I'd ever heard her address him. "Thank you." He buttoned his shirt slowly, deliberately. "That will be all for now." Mrs. Conti hesitated. "Sir, perhaps I should stay for the first. That will be all," he repeated, and this time there was steel in his voice. She nodded stiffly and left, casting me one last unreadable glance before pulling the door shut behind her. And then I was alone with him. "Did you sleep well, Elena Russo?" he asked, moving to a mirror to fix his collar. "Yes, sir," I lied. His eyes met mine in the reflection. "Now, we both know that's not true." I said nothing, unsure how to respond. He turned to face me. "Your new position comes with certain adjustments. Higher pay, private quarters here in the East Wing, and absolute discretion." "Private quarters? But I have an apartment." "Had," he corrected. "Your things are being moved as we speak." The casual control over my life stole my breath. "Sir, I don't understand." "Why me?" He approached slowly, like a predator who knows its prey can't escape. When he stood before me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, he reached out and tilted my chin up with one finger. "Because, Elena Russo, you've spent 19 months watching me. Now I want to watch you." A week passed in my new role as Salvatore Bolano's personal maid, and with each day, the weight of his attention grew heavier. Where once I had been invisible, now I felt his eyes following me constantly. When I arranged his breakfast tray, when I straightened his study, when I prepared his clothes for business meetings that sometimes stretched into the early hours of the morning. My quarters in the East Wing were luxurious by any standard, a spacious bedroom with an adjoining bathroom, all done in soft creams and blues that should have been soothing but somehow weren't. The windows overlooked the rose garden, and on clear nights, the Chicago skyline glittered in the distance like a false promise of escape. It was a beautiful cage, and with each passing day, I felt the bars closing in. "Elena." His voice came from the doorway of his study where I was dusting the bookshelves one afternoon. I hadn't heard him enter, a fact that made my heart skip with alarm. I was supposed to be aware of his movements at all times, to anticipate his needs before he voiced them. "Yes, Mr. Bolano." I turned, carefully schooling my features into the neutral expression I'd perfected. He leaned against the doorframe, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms, an unexpected vulnerability in his usual armor. "You'll accompany me this evening. It wasn't a request. Nothing with Salvatore Bolano ever was." "Accompany you, sir?" I'm hosting a dinner. You'll attend to me personally. My stomach tightened. In the week I'd worked directly for him, I'd managed to avoid the other side of his life. The meetings with men whose eyes never settled, the hushed phone conversations in Italian that stopped when I entered a room. Until now, he'd kept me separate from that world, and I'd been grateful for the distance. Is that usual, sir? For household staff to serve at private dinners? Something flashed in his eyes, amusement, perhaps, or irritation at being questioned. Nothing about this arrangement is usual, Elena. Be ready at 8. Wear this. He pulled a garment bag from behind the door and laid it across his desk. After he left, I approached the bag with trepidation, unzipping it to reveal a dress that was definitely not a maid's uniform. Black, elegant, with a modest neckline, but a back that dipped dangerously low. Beside it was a shoebox containing heels that probably cost more than 3 months of my former salary. I closed the bag quickly, as if hiding evidence of a crime. At precisely 7:55 that evening, I stood before the mirror in my quarters, barely recognizing the woman who stared back. The dress fit perfectly, suspiciously so, as if someone had taken my measurements while I slept. My dark hair was swept up in a simple knot, exposing the vulnerable curve of my neck. The only jewelry I owned was a thin gold chain with a small cross that had belonged to my mother. I'd hesitated before putting it on, unsure if it belonged in this new version of myself, but ultimately decided I needed whatever protection it might offer. A knock at my door startled me. I expected Mrs. Conti or perhaps one of the security staff. Instead, Salvatore Bellano himself stood in the hallway, impeccable in a black suit that made his olive skin glow. His eyes traveled over me slowly, deliberately, and I fought the urge to cross my arms over my chest. "Good," he said simply. "Come." I followed him through corridors I'd cleaned but never walked as a guest, feeling the weight of stares from other staff members we passed. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to outright suspicion, and I couldn't blame them. What was Elena Russo, the invisible maid, doing dressed like this, walking beside the master of the house rather than 3 steps behind? The dining room had been transformed. The long mahogany table gleamed under soft lighting, set for 12 with the finest china and crystal, fresh flowers spilled from centerpieces, their sweet scent mingling with the aroma of expensive food being prepared in the kitchen. "Stand here," Mr. Bellano instructed, positioning me near his chair at the head of the table. "You'll serve only me tonight. Pour my wine, replace my plates, speak when spoken to, and listen carefully to everything said." I nodded, trying to understand what my real purpose was. This wasn't about pouring wine or replacing plates. Any server could do that. And Elena? His voice dropped lower. "Stay within my sight at all times." The guests began to arrive shortly after. Men in expensive suits with cold eyes, and women dripping in jewels who kissed Mr. Bellano's cheeks with practiced affection. I recognized some faces from newspapers and television, a city councilman, a judge, the owner of a chain of luxury hotels. Others I knew instinctively were like him, men who operated in the shadows of power. I poured wine, replaced plates, and listened as they discussed property developments, political campaigns, and shipments arriving at the harbor, conversations that danced around their true meanings with elegant euphemism. And all the while, I felt Salvatore Bellano's attention, even when he appeared absorbed in conversation with a platinum blonde seated to his right. "Your new girl is pretty, Sal," she remarked, gesturing to me with a manicured hand as I refilled her water glass. "Where did you find this one?" "She was here all along, Vanessa," he replied, his eyes meeting mine for a brief electric moment. "Some treasures hide in plain sight." The woman, Vanessa, laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You always did have an eye for potential. Isn't that right, Adrian?" She directed this to a man seated across from her, handsome in a conventional way, with sharp features and sandy hair. He'd been watching me throughout the evening with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Indeed," Adrian agreed, raising his glass in a mock toast to me. "Though I'm surprised you've put such a fresh face on display so soon, Salvatore. Aren't you concerned about contamination?" A chill swept through me at the word. I wasn't naive. I knew what these people were, what they did. But hearing myself discussed as if I were an object, a potential security risk, made it suddenly, terrifyingly real. Mr. Bolano's hand closed around his knife, his knuckles whitening slightly. Elena has my complete confidence. After what, a week? Adrian pressed, his smile never reaching his eyes. That's unusually trusting, even for you. Perhaps I've changed, Mr. Bolano replied, his voice light but undercut with warning. Or perhaps, Adrian continued, undeterred, you've found yourself distracted by a pretty face. It happens to the best of us. Remember Vincenzo? All it took was one beautiful woman, and suddenly he thought he could skim from your accounts. The table fell silent. I nearly dropped the wine bottle I was holding, remembering the bruised man from Mr. Bolano's study. Vincenzo, the thief. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Elena, Mr. Bolano said quietly, would you fetch the special reserve from the cellar? The 1982. It was a dismissal, removing me from a conversation that was veering into dangerous territory. I nodded, grateful for the reprieve, and slipped from the dining room. The wine cellar lay beneath the kitchen, accessible through a heavy oak door and down a spiral staircase. It was cool and dim, the walls lined with bottles worth more than I would earn in a lifetime. I located the section labeled 1982 and began searching for the reserve Mr. Bolano had requested. Need help finding something? I whirled around to find Adrian standing at the foot of the stairs, blocking the only exit. My pulse quickened, and I instinctively took a step back. No, thank you. I've found it. I clutched the bottle to my chest like a shield. He moved closer, his expensive cologne filling the small space between us. You know, Elena, I've been watching you all evening, trying to figure out what makes you special. I'm just doing my job, sir. We both know that's not true. He reached out, touching my bare shoulder with one finger, tracing a line down my arm. Salvatore doesn't invite the help to sit at his table dressed like royalty. He doesn't look at maids the way he looks at you. I stepped sideways, away from his touch. Mr. Bolano is waiting for his wine. Let him wait. Adrian moved again, backing me against the wine racks. I'm curious what hold you have over him. What special talents you possess that captured his attention so completely. Please, step aside. My voice trembled, despite my efforts to keep it steady. What if I offered you more than he does? Adrian's breath was hot against my skin. Double whatever he's paying you. Your own apartment downtown. Protection from whatever it is you're running from. I'm not running from anything, he laughed. Everyone in Salvatore's orbit is running from something, sweet Elena. Or toward something they can't have otherwise. Money, power. His eyes traveled down my body. Security. I clutched the wine bottle tighter, wondering if I could use it as a weapon if necessary. I need to return upstairs, in a moment. He placed his hands on the rack behind me, caging me between his arms. First, tell me what Salvatore sees in you. What makes you worth breaking his own rules? Step away from her. The voice came from the stairway, low, controlled, but filled with such cold fury that the temperature in the cellar seemed to drop further. Salvatore Bellano stood at the foot of the stairs, his posture relaxed, but his eyes burning with a rage that made my blood freeze. Adrian straightened slowly, a smile playing at his lips as if this were all some amusing game. Sal, just getting acquainted with your new acquisition. Elena, come here. Mr. Bellano extended his hand, never taking his eyes off Adrian. I moved immediately, ducking under Adrian's arm and crossing to Mr. Bellano's side. His hand closed around mine, warm and steady. Go upstairs, he told me quietly. Tell Vanessa I'll be up shortly to continue our discussion about the harbor project. I hesitated. Sir. Now, Elena, the command in his voice brooked no argument. I climbed the stairs, glancing back once to see the two men facing each other in silent confrontation. At the top, I closed the door but remained beside it, my heart hammering against my ribs. I couldn't hear their words, only the low murmur of voices. Mr. Bolano's controlled, Adrian's increasingly defensive. 5 minutes later, the door opened, and Mr. Bolano emerged alone. His face was composed, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. He noticed me waiting and paused. I told you to go to the dining room, he said. but there was no anger in his voice, only a weary sort of resignation. I was concerned, I admitted. Something softened in his expression. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear that had escaped during my encounter with Adrian. The gesture was startlingly intimate, his fingers lingering against my cheek longer than necessary. "You don't need to fear Adrian," he said. "Or anyone else in this house. Do you understand?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure I did understand. Not fully. "Where is he?" I asked, glancing at the cellar door, taking a moment to reconsider his approach to our business relationship. Mr. Bolano's voice was calm, but his eyes remained hard. "He'll join us shortly." Adrian did return to the table 10 minutes later. His earlier swagger diminished, a thin cut on his cheekbone that hadn't been there before. He avoided looking at me or Mr. Bolano for the remainder of the evening. As the dinner concluded and guests began to leave, Mr. Bolano placed a hand at the small of my back, guiding me away from the goodbyes. His touch burned through the thin fabric of my dress, sending an involuntary shiver down my spine. "I'd like you to accompany me to my study," he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. The study was dimly lit, the curtains open to reveal the garden bathed in moonlight. Mr. Bolano crossed to a cabinet and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid, offering one to me. I took it hesitantly. "Sit," he instructed, gesturing to one of the leather armchairs by the fireplace. I perched on the edge, still feeling like an imposter in my borrowed finery. He remained standing, looking down at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. "What did Adrian say to you in the cellar?" he asked. I took a small sip of the whiskey, welcoming the burn as it slid down my throat. He asked what made me special, why you had broken your rules for me. I looked up at him. "I'd like to know the answer myself, Mr. Bolano." He studied me for a long moment, then set his glass down and knelt before my chair, bringing his face level with mine. In this position, with the firelight casting shadows across his features, he looked almost vulnerable. "When I saw you outside my study that day, do you know what struck me, Elena Russo?" I shook my head. "You looked at me without pretense, without calculation." His voice had dropped to a near whisper. "Do you know how rare that is in my world? How valuable?" His words hung between us like smoke, both revealing and obscuring. I struggled to process what he was telling me. That my transparency, my inability to hide my fear and honesty, was what had drawn him to me. It seemed too simple an explanation for the upheaval of my life. "There are people who would give anything to be in your position," he continued, still kneeling before me, close enough that I could see the faint stubble beginning to shadow his jaw. "To have my attention, my protection. I didn't ask for either," I said quietly. A smile touched his lips, genuine amusement rather than mockery. "No, you didn't." He rose smoothly and returned to the cabinet, refilling his glass. "That's part of your appeal, Elena. You're not trying to get anything from me." "What happens when that changes?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. He turned, eyebrows raised. "Are you planning to start making demands, Elena Russo?" "No, I set my glass down, frustrated at my inability to articulate the unease that had been building within me. "What happens when you tire of whatever this is? When you no longer find my honesty appealing?" He approached again, this time taking the seat opposite mine. The fire crackled between us, casting his face in alternating light and shadow. "You think I'll discard you?" It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Tell me, Elena, what do you know about me? Not what you've heard or what you've observed. What do you know?" I considered his question carefully. "I know you're feared," I began slowly. "I know you're powerful beyond just money. I know you have connections throughout the city, political, legal, criminal. And does that frighten you?" "Of course it does." He nodded, accepting this. "What else?" I hesitated, then decided to risk complete honesty. "I know you're capable of violence. I've seen men enter this house whole and leave broken. I've cleaned blood from your shirts." His expression remained impassive. "Continue." "I know you protect what you consider yours. Fiercely. Completely. I met his gaze directly. And I know that, for reasons I can't understand, you now consider me yours. Something flickered in his eyes. Satisfaction, perhaps, at my perception. Very good, Elena. Very observant. You haven't answered my question, I pressed. What happens when you no longer want me in this position? He leaned back, studying me. That depends entirely on you. If you serve me loyally, keep my confidences, there will always be a place for you. If not, he let the implication hang. So I'm a prisoner. No. His voice sharpened. You're protected. There's a difference. Protected from what? He gestured vaguely toward the window, toward the city beyond. From the reality of the world we live in. From people like Adrian, who see someone like you as nothing but a means to an end. His eyes locked with mine. I can arrange for you to leave this house tomorrow, Elena, with recommendations, money, a new identity if you wish. Is that what you want? The offer was unexpected, and I found myself genuinely considering it. Freedom. A return to anonymity, to safety. But something in his expression made me hesitate. There was a challenge there, yes, but also something else. Vulnerability, perhaps. The possibility that my answer mattered to him beyond the practical implications. No, I said finally. Not tomorrow. He nodded, satisfied, and rose. It's late. I'll escort you to your quarters. We walked in silence through the quiet corridors of the East Wing. At my door, he paused, his hand lightly touching my elbow. Good night, Elena Russo, he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. Good night, Mr. Bellano. He turned to leave, then stopped. Salvatore, he said, without looking back. When we're alone, call me Salvatore. After he left, I stood in my room, still dressed in the elegant black gown he had provided, feeling the weight of the evening settle around me. Something had shifted between us. A boundary crossed, a door opened that couldn't be easily closed again. I slept fitfully that night, dreaming of cellars with no exits, and dinners where I was both server and served. When morning came, I returned to my duties with a strange new awareness of my position. Not quite staff, not quite equal, something undefined and dangerous. Days passed in a new routine. I continued to attend to Salvatore's personal needs, preparing his clothes, serving his meals, maintaining his private spaces. But now there were additional duties. I accompanied him to business dinners, always in dresses he selected, always standing just behind his chair, observing, listening. I attended meetings in his home study, serving coffee to men who regarded me with varying degrees of suspicion and interest. And through it all, I felt his eyes on me, tracking my movements, gauging my reactions. Protecting me, yes, but also claiming me. The staff treated me differently now. Mrs. Conti was coldly professional, addressing me with a formality that bordered on hostility. The security team, previously indifferent to my existence, now nodded respectfully when I passed. The other maids, once my friends, avoided my gaze in the hallways. Only Giovanni, Salvatore's driver and bodyguard, showed me any warmth. A mountain of a man with surprisingly gentle eyes, he'd been with the Bellano family for decades, since Salvatore's father's time. He values loyalty above all else, Giovanni told me one afternoon as we waited in the car while Salvatore conducted business inside a downtown restaurant. His father taught him that. Family first, then those who prove themselves worthy of trust. And which am I? I asked. Family or other? Giovanni's eyes crinkled at the corners. That, little bird, is the question we're all asking. 3 weeks after my promotion, Salvatore informed me that we would be attending a charity gala at the Chicago Art Institute. It's a public event, he explained as I laid out his tuxedo. You'll need to be especially vigilant. I glanced up from straightening his cufflinks. Vigilant for what? Ears that shouldn't hear, eyes that watch too closely. He studied me. You'll need something appropriate to wear. I've arranged for a stylist to visit tomorrow. The stylist arrived with an entourage and dozens of gowns. I endured hours of fittings, the women discussing me as if I weren't present, debating colors and cuts that would please Mr. Bellano while remaining appropriately understated. They finally selected a deep burgundy gown with a high neck and open back. Simple but undeniably elegant. My hair was arranged in loose waves, my makeup subtle but enhancing. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Perfect, the lead stylist declared. feminine but not overtly sexual, elegant without drawing too much attention. I wondered when my appearance had become a strategic consideration, rather than a personal one. Salvatore was waiting at the foot of the grand staircase when I descended, his back to me as he checked his watch. He turned at the sound of my footsteps, and for a moment, just a moment, his carefully controlled expression faltered. Something raw and hungry flashed in his eyes before he mastered himself. "Acceptable," he said, offering his arm. The gala was a kaleidoscope of Chicago's elite, politicians, business leaders, old money and new, all mingling beneath the soaring ceilings of the Art Institute. I stayed close to Salvatore's side, accepting introductions with a practiced smile, and the minimal responses I'd learned were expected of me. "Senator Williams, may I present Elena Russo, my personal assistant, Mrs. Montgomery. This is Elena, a valued member of my household." Never quite a lie, never quite the truth. I existed in the liminal space between staff and companion, a position designed to both display me and render me invisible when necessary. "Salvatore Bolano," a voice called as we circulated through the grand gallery. "I was wondering if you'd grace us with your presence tonight." The woman who approached was striking, tall, with auburn hair swept into an elegant updo, wearing a gown that probably cost more than my family's house had. There was a familiarity in the way she touched Salvatore's arm, in the smile that curved her red lips. "Sophia," Salvatore acknowledged, kissing her cheeks. "You look ravishing as always." "And you look exactly the same," she laughed. "Dangerously handsome and utterly unattainable." Her gaze shifted to me, assessing. Or perhaps not so unattainable after all. Salvatore's hand came to rest at the small of my back, a gesture that had become familiar but still sent heat coursing through me. "Elena Russo, may I introduce Sophia Ricci, an old friend." The way Sophia's eyebrows rose at the word friend told me there had been more to their relationship. "Charmed," she said, extending a hand adorned with a diamond that caught the light with every movement. "How long have you been with Salvatore, Elena?" Before I could answer, Salvatore interjected. "Elena has been an invaluable addition to my household." His tone made it clear the subject was closed. Sophia's smile never faltered, but her eyes hardened slightly. "Well, you always did have excellent taste." She turned back to Salvatore. "I heard about the situation with Adrian Kovac. Such a shame when partnerships dissolve so contentiously." Salvatore's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Business is business, Sophia. You know how it is." "I do indeed." She glanced at me again, though some matters blur the line between business and pleasure. A server passed with champagne, and Salvatore deftly plucked 2 glasses, handing one to me. "If you'll excuse us, Sophia," the mayor was hoping for a word. As we moved away, I took a sip of champagne to steady my nerves. "Who is she really?" I asked quietly. "Exactly who I said, an old friend." His jaw was tight, his eyes scanning the room rather than meeting mine. "She seemed to know a lot about your business." "Sophia knows a little about a lot of things. It makes her dangerous in certain circles." His hand at my back guided me toward a quieter corner of the gallery. "She's also the daughter of Marco Ricci." The name meant nothing to me, and my confusion must have shown. "Marco controls most of the north side," Salvatore explained. "My father and he had an arrangement that I've honored since taking over the family business. Sophia serves as her father's eyes and ears at events like these." "And she was your lover," I said, the words escaping before I could think better of them. Salvatore's eyes snapped to mine, surprise giving way to something like amusement. "Yes, many years ago. I'm sorry. It's none of my business." "No," he agreed, "it isn't." But there was no censure in his tone, just that same hint of satisfaction I'd noticed before, when I spoke without filtering my thoughts. "Though I find your interest noteworthy." Heat crept up my neck, and I was grateful for the dimmed lighting in this section of the gallery. We stood before a large canvas, abstract swirls of blue and gold that seemed to move in the shadowy light. "What do you see?" Salvatore asked, nodding toward the painting. I studied it, grateful for the change of subject. "Turbulence," I said finally, "like water in a storm, but also warmth breaking through, light finding a way in." He looked at me curiously, Most people just see expensive splashes of paint. My mother was an art teacher, I explained, before she got sick. It was the first personal detail I'd shared with him, and I saw him file it away, adding to whatever mental dossier he kept on me. And your father? Construction worker. He died when I was 14, accident at a site. Salvatore nodded, his expression giving nothing away. And after your mother's illness, I dropped out of college to care for her. After she passed, I needed work. Mrs. Conti had been my mother's student years ago. She helped me get the position at your estate. I turned back to the painting. I never planned to be a maid forever. It was just what I could do at the time. And now? What do you plan now, Elena Russo? The question was loaded. Impossible to answer honestly when I didn't know myself. Before I could formulate a response, a commotion near the main entrance drew our attention. Security personnel were moving quickly, surrounding someone I couldn't see. Salvatore tensed beside me, his hand shifting from my back to grip my arm. Stay close, he murmured, moving us deeper into the shadowed alcove. What is it? I whispered. I'm not certain, but I don't intend to find out. He guided me toward a service door half hidden behind a large sculpture. Giovanni, he spoke into a small device I hadn't realized he was carrying. East entrance now. The service corridor was deserted, our footsteps echoing against tile floors. Salvatore moved with purpose, never releasing his hold on me, navigating the back passages of the museum with familiar ease. Does this happen often? I asked, as we emerged into a small courtyard where the black Bentley was already waiting, engine running, often enough to have contingencies. He replied, opening the car door and ushering me inside. Giovanni didn't ask questions as we slid into the back seat, simply pulled away from the curb with smooth efficiency. Through the tinted windows, I saw police cars arriving at the main entrance, lights flashing. What happened in there? I asked once we were safely moving through downtown traffic. Salvatore was checking his phone, his expression grim. Someone was arrested. Not my concern, except that it created a security situation I prefer to avoid. You mean the police, I said, understanding dawning. You avoid the police. His eyes met mine, dark and unreadable in the dim interior of the car. As a rule, yes. We rode in silence for several blocks before I gathered the courage to ask the question that had been building within me since the dinner with Adrian, since the conversation with Sophia. Are you in danger, Salvatore? He didn't answer immediately. The city lights flashed across his face as we drove, illuminating and shadowing his features in rhythmic succession. Finally, he turned to me fully. Everyone in my position lives with danger, Elena. His voice was measured, careful. It's the price of power. Is that why you wanted me close? As some kind of insurance? A faint smile touched his lips. Is that what you think? That you're a human shield? I flushed, the suggestion sounding ridiculous when he phrased it that way. I don't know what I am to you. No, he agreed, his gaze intensifying. You don't. The car pulled through the gates of the estate, the familiar grounds appearing almost otherworldly in the moonlight. Giovanni stopped at the main entrance, coming around to open our door. Everything quiet at home, sir, he reported as we exited the car. Salvatore nodded. Double the perimeter security tonight. And send Franco to my study in 20 minutes. Yes, sir. Giovanni's eyes flicked briefly to me, a flash of concern before he masked it. Inside, the house was hushed, the night staff moving silently through their duties. Salvatore led me not toward my quarters, but to his study, closing the door behind us with a soft click that somehow sounded definitive. Sit, he instructed, gesturing to the leather couch along one wall as he crossed to the bar cart. I perched on the edge of the couch, still in my gala finery, watching as he poured 2 glasses of what looked like bourbon. He handed me one before taking a seat beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body but not touching me. You asked if you were insurance, he began, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. You're not. If anything, your presence in my life has created new vulnerabilities. The admission surprised me. Then why? Because I want you here, he cut in, his voice rough with an emotion I couldn't name. Because from the moment I saw you outside this study, with your cleaning cart and your terrified eyes that still managed to look directly at me, I knew I needed to keep you close." "Need," I repeated, the word hanging in the air between us. "Not want." His eyes darkened. Both. He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek with unexpected gentleness. I should have pulled away. Every instinct for self-preservation screamed at me to maintain distance. Instead, I found myself leaning into his touch, my body betraying my better judgment. "You're afraid of me," he murmured, but not only afraid. The truth of his words burned through me. Yes, I feared Salvatore Bellano, his power, his darkness, the violence I knew he was capable of. But there was more. A pull toward him I couldn't explain or justify, an awareness that had been growing since that first moment outside his study. "You should send me away," I whispered, even as I remained perfectly still under his touch. "Somewhere far from Chicago, from your enemies, from you." "Is that what you want, Elena?" "No." The admission fell from my lips before I could stop it, honest and damning. Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. His hand slid from my cheek to the nape of my neck, fingers tangling in my hair as he drew me closer. "Tell me to stop," he said, his breath warm against my lips. I said nothing. His mouth claimed mine with restrained hunger, as if he were holding himself back, afraid of frightening me. The kiss was gentler than I had imagined. And yes, I had imagined it, in the dark of night when I could admit such dangerous thoughts. His lips moved over mine with careful precision, tasting, testing, seeking permission for more. I had never been kissed like this, like I was something precious and rare, something to be savored rather than consumed. My hands found their way to his shoulders, feeling the solid strength beneath fine wool. A sharp knock at the door broke the moment. Salvatore drew back slowly, his eyes never leaving mine as he called, "Enter." I tried to pull away completely, but his hand on my waist held me in place as Franco, his head of security, stepped into the room. If the man was surprised to find his boss intimately positioned with the household maid, he gave no indication. "Sir," Franco began, his eyes fixed somewhere over our heads, "we've confirmed the situation at the gala. FBI arrested Councilman Davis on corruption charges. They were specifically targeting him, but they're questioning everyone he spoke with tonight." "Were we seen leaving?" Salvatore asked, his thumb tracing small circles on my hip, a distracting contrast to the serious conversation. "No, sir. Clean exit. But there's something else." Franco hesitated. "Vincenzo Rossi was picked up an hour ago. Rumor is he's talking." Salvatore stiffened beside me. "About?" "Everything, potentially. He's desperate, sir. After failing to deliver what he owed you." I remembered the bruised man from weeks ago. Vincenzo, who had stolen from Salvatore, who had been given until Friday to make amends. "Keep me updated," Salvatore said, his voice gone cold. "And Franco, make sure our friends in the department understand the importance of discretion." "Already handled, sir." After Franco left, Salvatore remained silent for a long moment, his expression distant, calculating. I could almost see him weighing options, considering scenarios, planning moves and countermoves like a chess master. "You should go to your room," he said finally, his voice neutral, all traces of our earlier intimacy erased. "Lock the door. Stay there until I come for you. Salvatore." "Now, Elena." There was no room for argument in his tone. I rose, smoothing my gown with shaking hands. At the door, I paused. "Will you tell me what's happening?" He looked up, his face a mask of control. "When I can." I spent the night in tense solitude, changing from my gown into a simple nightdress, pacing the confines of my luxurious prison. Through my window, I could see increased security patrolling the grounds, dark figures moving with purpose through the shadowed gardens. Dawn broke with no word from Salvatore. I showered and dressed in my regular uniform, uncertain what the day would bring, but needing the comfort of routine. As I pinned my hair back, a knock came at my door. It was Giovanni, his usually jovial face grave. "Mr. Bellano requests your presence in the garage, immediately." "The garage?" I frowned. Is something wrong? Pack a small bag, Giovanni instructed instead of answering. Essentials only. I'll wait in the hall. My heart raced as I threw clothing and toiletries into a duffel bag. Was I being sent away? Had the kiss been a mistake he now regretted? Or was this connected to whatever threat Franco had reported? The garage was a cavernous space beneath the mansion, housing Salvatore's collection of luxury vehicles. He stood beside a nondescript black SUV, conferring quietly with Franco and two other security men I recognized but couldn't name. When he saw me, he broke away, crossing to intercept me. Change of plans, he said without preamble. We're leaving for a few days. My lake house in Michigan. Why? I asked, clutching my bag. What's happened? His jaw tightened. A complication. Nothing I can't handle, but I want you away from Chicago until it's resolved. So I am insurance, I said, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. Salvatore took my arm, guiding me away from the others. You're a target, he said, his voice low and intense. Vincenzo has been feeding the FBI information, true and false, trying to save himself. Your name came up. A cold weight settled in my stomach. My name? Why would he even know who I am? Because Adrian told him. Salvatore's expression darkened. After our dinner, Adrian suggested to several people that you might be more than just staff to me, that you might have influence. I don't understand, I said, though a terrible suspicion was forming. They think you could be leveraged against me. Salvatore's hands came up to frame my face. And they're right. The admission hung between us, both a declaration and a warning. I had become his vulnerability, exactly what he'd said in his study. And now we were both paying the price. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be. His thumb brushed my lower lip. Just stay close to me. Do exactly as I say. Can you do that, Elena? I nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in my throat. The drive to Michigan took just under 3 hours. Giovanni at the wheel, Franco riding shotgun, and 2 more security vehicles following at a discreet distance. Salvatore spent most of the journey on the phone, speaking in rapid Italian that I couldn't follow, occasionally switching to English for technical discussions of accounts and property holdings. I gazed out the window as urban sprawl gave way to rolling countryside and finally the coastal beauty of Lake Michigan, trying to process how completely my life had changed in the span of weeks. From invisible maid to... what? Asset? Liability? Something more personal that neither of us had named? The lake house proved to be a misnomer. What awaited us was a modern mansion of glass and stone perched on a cliff overlooking the water, surrounded by acres of private forest. Security features were discreetly integrated into the design. Cameras disguised as lighting fixtures, reinforced windows that probably weren't just for withstanding storms, a gatehouse with a guard already stationed. Welcome to Bolano Point, Giovanni announced as we pulled into a circular drive. The quietest place on the lake. Inside, the house was all clean lines and minimal furnishing, the focus clearly on the spectacular views visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. A housekeeper greeted us, an older woman who eyed me with open curiosity but said nothing as Salvatore instructed her to prepare lunch. I'll show you to your room, he said, taking my bag. The staff here is minimal but trustworthy. Maria handles the house. There are 2 groundskeepers who double as security, plus Giovanni and Franco who will stay while we're here. I followed him up a floating staircase to the 2nd floor, where a hallway of closed doors awaited. He opened one near the end, revealing a spacious bedroom with its own private balcony overlooking the lake. My room is next door, he said, setting my bag on a bench at the foot of the bed. There's a connecting door, kept locked from both sides. The key is in the drawer if you need it. The implication was clear. He was giving me privacy, control. A choice. Thank you, I said, moving to the window to gaze out at the water. The lake stretched to the horizon, sun glinting off waves, a vision of serenity at odds with the tension thrumming through me. How long will we stay? Until it's safe to return. He came to stand beside me, close but not touching. My attorneys are handling the situation with the FBI. Vincenzo's credibility is minimal, but they're obligated to follow every lead. And what about your business? Your other concerns? A faint smile touched his lips. Everything can be managed remotely these days. Even my kind of business. I turned to face him fully. And what exactly is your business, Salvatore? Beyond the legitimate enterprises, beyond the properties and restaurants and shipping companies. His expression grew guarded. You know what it is. I want to hear you say it, I insisted. If I'm risking everything by being associated with you, I deserve the truth. He studied me for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. My family has controlled certain aspects of Chicago's economy for 3 generations, he began carefully. Import-export, labor relations, protection services, financial solutions for those who can't access traditional banking, criminal enterprises, I translated. Some would use that term. The FBI would. Yes. He didn't flinch from the accusation. But it's more complicated than legal versus illegal, Elena. The lines blur. Politicians who campaign on law and order come to men like me when they need problems solved discreetly. Police chiefs look the other way when certain businesses operate because their pensions are funded by the same investments. And that justifies it? I asked. Not accusingly, but seeking understanding. I don't need justification. His voice hardened slightly. I was born into this world. I've simply made it more efficient, more profitable, less violent than in my father's day. Less violent, I repeated, thinking of Vincenzo's bruised face, of the fear Adrian had shown after his encounter with Salvatore in the wine cellar. He caught my meaning. There are necessary exceptions. Before I could respond, a knock came at the door. Franco's voice called through. Sir, we have a situation developing. A call you'll want to take. Salvatore's jaw tightened. I'll be right there. To me, he added, Rest. We'll continue this conversation later. After he left, I unpacked my few belongings and changed from my uniform into jeans and a sweater, clothes that felt both foreign and liberating after weeks of prescribed attire. The normality of the outfit was at odds with the extraordinary circumstances, a juxtaposition that made me laugh aloud in the empty room, a sound edged with hysteria. I found my way downstairs after changing, following the scent of coffee to a spacious kitchen where Maria was preparing lunch. She glanced up as I entered, her weathered hands continuing to chop vegetables with practiced precision. He's on the terrace, she said without preamble, nodding toward glass doors that led outside. Terrible for business, that man. Always has been. I blinked, surprised by her candor. You've known him long? Since he was born. She swept the vegetables into a pot. I worked for his father and his grandfather before that. Salvatore is the best of them, though he'd never believe it if you told him. I hesitated by the counter, unsure if I should join him or give him privacy for his business. Maria seemed to read my indecision. He'll want you there, she said, pouring coffee into a mug and handing it to me. He doesn't bring people here. Not personal guests, anyway. The terrace stretched along the back of the house, a stone expanse furnished with comfortable seating areas and an outdoor kitchen. Salvatore stood at the railing, his back to me, phone pressed to his ear. The autumn wind off the lake ruffled his hair, the only part of him that seemed affected by the elements. Don't care what they're offering him, he was saying, voice tight with controlled anger. Remind Vincenzo what happened to the Moretti family when they decided to cooperate. I froze, coffee mug halfway to my lips. Salvatore must have sensed my presence because he turned, eyes locking with mine. For a moment, something like shame crossed his features before the mask of control returned. Handle it, he said into the phone before hanging up. He slipped the device into his pocket and crossed to where I stood. You heard that, he stated rather than asked. I nodded, unable to lie. The Moretti family? Salvatore sighed, guiding me to a seating area sheltered from the worst of the wind. A competing organization from 10 years ago. They made some poor decisions. Did you kill them? The question was blunt, but we were beyond delicate phrasing. No. He sat opposite me, his posture relaxed despite the tension in his eyes. They were relocated to South America with new identities. My father would have had them killed. I found an alternative. Relief washed through me, quickly tempered by realism. But you wanted Vincenzo to think they were killed. A wry smile touched his lips. Perception is a powerful tool, Elena. Fear prevents more violence than it causes, when managed correctly. We sat in silence for a moment. the crash of waves against the cliff below filling the space between us. "Why did you bring me here?" I finally asked, the question that had been burning within me since we'd left Chicago. "If I'm a liability, wouldn't it be safer to distance yourself from me?" "Safer for whom?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I told you before. You've become a vulnerability for me. My enemies know it. Which means keeping you safe is now my priority. Because I'm useful to you?" His expression darkened. "Because I care what happens to you, Elena. More than is wise. More than I've cared about anyone in a very long time." The admission hung in the air between us, weighted with implications neither of us fully understood. I'd known there was something beyond professional interest, beyond even physical attraction. But this suggested depths I wasn't sure either of us was ready to explore. "I don't fit in your world," I said softly. "No," he agreed, "you don't. You're untouched by it. Uncorrupted." His gaze held mine, intense and uncompromising. "That's precisely why I want you in it." Maria called us for lunch, interrupting the moment. We ate on the terrace despite the chill. A simple but exquisite meal that neither of us fully appreciated, both too preoccupied with unspoken thoughts. That night, I found myself unable to sleep, the day's revelations churning in my mind. I stepped onto my private balcony, the cool air raising goosebumps on my skin. The lake stretched before me, a vast darkness broken only by the reflected light of a nearly full moon. Below, I could make out the silhouettes of security personnel patrolling the grounds. A golden rectangle of light appeared to my right as the balcony door of the adjacent room opened. Salvatore stepped out, now in casual clothes, dark jeans and a black sweater that made him look younger, more approachable. "You should be sleeping," he said, his voice carrying easily in the night stillness. "So should you." He smiled faintly. "Sleep and I have a complicated relationship." Guilty conscience? The words slipped out before I could stop them. To my surprise, he laughed, a genuine sound I'd rarely heard from him. "Among other things." He gestured to the divider between our balconies. "May I join you?" I nodded, and he easily stepped over the short partition, closing the distance between us. "Any updates on the situation in Chicago?" I asked as he came to stand beside me at the railing. "Vincenzo is being more cooperative with my people than with the FBI," he said, satisfaction evident in his tone. "He'll recant his statements about you tomorrow, claim he was confused, trying to create leverage." Relief flooded through me. "So we can go back?" Salvatore turned to face me fully, his expression serious in the moonlight. "Is that what you want? To return to Chicago, to the estate, to your role as my personal maid?" The question caught me off guard. I don't know. "Because things can't go back to the way they were, Elena." He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Not after this. Not after what's happened between us." My heart raced at his touch. "And what exactly has happened between us, Salvatore?" Instead of answering with words, he drew me to him, his mouth finding mine with less restraint than our first kiss in his study. This time, there was hunger, need, a claiming that sent heat spiraling through me. My arms wrapped around his neck as his hands spanned my waist, pulling me flush against him. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, he rested his forehead against mine. "That," he murmured, "that has happened. And more, if you'll allow it." "And if I don't?" I whispered, needing to know where the boundaries lay. He pulled back slightly, his eyes searching mine. "Then I'll respect your decision, arrange for your safety elsewhere. Set you up with a new life, far from Chicago, far from me." The offer was genuine. I could see it in his expression, feel it in the way his hands loosened their hold, already preparing to let me go if that was my choice. In that moment, I realized the true power I held. Not influence over his business or his decisions, but over his heart. A power I had never sought, but now found myself unwilling to relinquish. I reached up, tracing the line of his jaw with trembling fingers. "I don't want a new life far from you." His eyes darkened with desire, and something deeper, more profound. "Elena." A sharp knock at my bedroom door interrupted the moment. Salvatore tensed, instantly alert. "Mr. Bolano?" Giovanni's voice called urgently. "Sir." We have a situation." Salvatore moved quickly, crossing to the door and opening it to reveal Giovanni, expression grim. "Security detected a boat approaching from the south," he reported. "No lights, moving fast." "How many?" Salvatore asked. All traces of tenderness gone, replaced by cold efficiency. "Thermal shows 3, maybe 4, armed. Get Elena to the safe room," Salvatore instructed. "Now." "Salvatore, wait," I began, but he cut me off with a look. "Trust me," he said simply. Giovanni led me through the house to what appeared to be a wine cellar, but pressing a hidden panel revealed a reinforced door leading to a windowless room equipped with monitors showing security feeds from around the property. "You'll be safe here," Giovanni assured me. "The room is designed to withstand virtually anything." "And Salvatore?" I asked, watching the monitors with growing alarm as dark figures approached the shoreline below the house. Giovanni's expression softened. "He's survived worse, signorina. Far worse. Left alone, I watched the security feeds with my heart in my throat. Men in dark clothing moved up from the shore, weapons visible in the night vision cameras. Salvatore and his security team positioned themselves strategically throughout the house and grounds. The volume was muted, but I could see Salvatore giving orders, his face set with deadly determination. The intruders reached the lawn, spreading out to approach the house from multiple angles. On one screen, I saw Franco intercept the first man, a brief struggle ending with the intruder on the ground. Another screen showed Salvatore himself confronting 2 men, moving with a lethal grace I had never witnessed before. There was no hesitation in his actions, no restraint. This was the man his enemies feared, the man who controlled Chicago's underworld through force when necessary. The confrontation was over in minutes. The intruders subdued, Salvatore conferring with Franco, gesturing toward the boat. I couldn't hear their conversation, but the grim satisfaction on Salvatore's face told me enough. The door to the safe room opened an hour later, revealing Salvatore. He had changed clothes, but I could see a darkening bruise on his cheekbone, a small cut at the corner of his lip. "It's over," he said simply. "You can come out now." I rose on shaky legs. Who were they? Adrian's men. He held out his hand to me. "A misguided attempt to acquire leverage. To kidnap me," I translated, placing my hand in his. "Yes." The single word contained a universe of cold fury. "And now?" "Now, Adrian understands the consequences of such ambitions." Salvatore led me back upstairs to the main level of the house, where evidence of the confrontation had already been erased. "We'll return to Chicago tomorrow. The situation has been clarified for all involved parties." I didn't ask what that clarification entailed. Some details were better left unspoken. Dawn broke over the lake as we stood on the terrace, watching the first light touch the water. Salvatore's arm was around my waist, holding me close against the morning chill. "When we return," he said quietly, "things will be different. I can't offer you a normal life, Elena. I can't promise safety in any conventional sense. My world will always have dangers." "I know." He turned me to face him. "But I can promise you this, you will never be invisible again. Not to me, not to anyone. You will be acknowledged as mine, under my protection, part of my life in every way that matters." "And what exactly am I to you, Salvatore Bolano?" I asked, needing to hear him define it. His eyes, amber in the morning light, held mine with unwavering intensity. "Everything," he said simply. "You've become everything." The drive back to Chicago was different from our tense journey to the lake house. Salvatore kept me close, his hand often finding mine, his conversation no longer hidden in Italian or hushed tones. Whatever decision had been made during the night's confrontation had resolved something within him, stripped away a layer of caution. As the Chicago skyline appeared on the horizon, I felt a strange mixture of trepidation and anticipation. We were returning to his world, to the estate, to his business, to the realities of who he was and what he did. But we were returning changed, the dynamic between us transformed. The estate looked exactly as we had left it. The staff lined up to greet us with the same deference they always showed, but their eyes now tracked me differently as I walked beside Salvatore rather than behind him, his hand at the small of my back, guiding rather than directing. Mrs. Conti approached with a tight smile. Welcome back, Mr. Bolano. Your study has been prepared as requested, and— Thank you, Mrs. Conti, Salvatore interrupted. Please have Elena's belongings moved from the East Wing staff quarters to the master suite. A shocked silence followed his instruction. Mrs. Conti's eyes widened fractionally before her professional mask slipped back into place. Of course, sir. Right away. As we entered the mansion, Salvatore drew me aside in the grand foyer, unconcerned with the staff still within earshot. I meant what I said at the lake house, Elena. You'll never be invisible again. His voice carried, ensuring everyone heard his next words. This is your home now, not as staff, but as the woman I've chosen to stand beside me. The declaration echoed through the marble hall, reaching every ear, eliminating any ambiguity about my position. I should have felt exposed, vulnerable under the stares of those who had once been my colleagues. Instead, I felt a strange new power, not derived from Salvatore's authority, but from the knowledge that I had seen beneath his carefully controlled exterior and chosen to remain despite everything I knew. Are you sure? I asked quietly. One last chance for him to reconsider the public acknowledgement. His answer was to draw me into his arms, his kiss leaving no doubt in anyone's mind about our relationship. When he pulled back, his eyes held a promise I had never expected to find in my life as an invisible maid. I've never been more certain of anything, Salvatore Bolano said, the man who had broken every rule for me. And I, Elena Russo, who had once cleaned the shadows of his world, stepped fully into the light of it, eyes open, heart resolved, no longer invisible, but seen completely by the one man who had looked past my uniform to the woman beneath.